Hi everybody, and welcome to this time lapse. We've got this lovely, very kind of reminds me of the old Dutch masters in terms of the color and the subject matter. Something quite simple, a lot of browns, but some very interesting light on our subjects. I generated this image using a Midjourney AI bot. And I'm working on the pastel matte paper here. It's in the light maize color. I've got my sketch in there, and then I'm putting in my background as always. Well, most of the time, that's our starter piece, is I put in the background. I work from backwards to the front, objects, generally. That's not always the case, but that is generally how I work. Using a range of pastels, Mount Vision, Unison. That very dark color that you can see looks black. It's not actually black. It's a very dark brown. It's Grey 13 from Unison. And it's literally one of my favorite colors, especially for shadow. It's very intense and it's very dark, as you can see. But it's not black. So in real life, it has this depth, but it's not flat and dead like black is. So also making use of some of my pastel pencils. You can see I've got my reference photo graph right next to me. I just find it easier so your eyes don't have far to travel when you're working. You're literally just, it's a tiny little side glance to make sure that I've got things in the right place. So going in with a whole range of browns and some very kind of like reddish browns and grayish browns to build up the tones and the colors of the bread. So important to remember, in order for this to look 3D, I need to get my darks really dark, some mid-tones and some nice lighter tones. So you can see for the crust of the bread in the ridges on the top, I've gone in with my very dark Grey 13. You could even use black in those ridges because you're going to put some browns and some grays on top of that. So it's going to nullify the dead look of the black. So if I want something to be really dark, like if you don't have Grey 13 from Unison, you could use black and then add some brown into that and, you know, mix it up a little bit so that it's, like I said, not so flat and dead. Because we're dealing with a photo reference that is quite dark in nature, and there's not a lot of different colors from the color wheel. You know, you don't have any primary yellow or blue or red per se. It's very much on more of the muted orange, very muted gray browns and orange browns. So you definitely don't want this piece looking flat and dull. So going in with black and then colors on top of the black is going to help that. So really moving on to the bread. So the yeast makes those holes in the bread. I'm sure there's a proper bread name for it. Have no idea what it is. The yeast holes is what I'm going to call it. It's really important to get a dark, a mid-tone and a light. So on the edge it's kind of like C shapes. On the edge, put in your dark, then you go in with the mid-tone right next to that, and then a light on the other side of that. And that's going to create the look of like a hole effect. So just using pastel pencils as well as the pastel sticks to create the illusion of those holes. And you saw me going around with like a Q-tip, an earbud, and I would just mush in those colors when I was creating all the yeast holes. Because my finger, you know, I can use my baby finger and it's too big sometimes. So you can use a tortillon or paper stamp or a Q-tip. Is really, really useful when you want to create some softness in the hole. Because you don't want it to look too much like a line, and a line. You need to create kind of like an organic flow from dark to light. So creating that softness in the transitions from the dark to the mid-tone to the light, that's what's going to create the realism. So I use my hands all the time in my pastel work, or I'll use little tools like tortillon or a Q-tip, like I was saying. So in this piece, well, in every piece I should say, it's really important to get the tonal values to create the realism. So if I had just dark and then I jumped all the way to light values, this piece would look odd and really, really quite flat. I'm talking if your style is wanting to be that of realism, okay? I'm not talking about any other style of art really. You need the tonal values. You need your darks, your mid-tones, and your lights. Even in my work now, so I've been doing this for about 5 years now. When I say do this, I mean painting. I started with watercolor, then colored pencils, then I moved on to pastels and fell in love. But anyway, so I've been doing art, let's say, creating art for about 5 years, seriously for 5 years. And even now in some of my paintings, I don't have enough of a mid-tone range. Sometimes I'm jumping from very dark to values that are too light. And I'm needing to get those nuances in between for the piece to look more pleasing to the eye. So, and it's just something I kind of noticed recently. But what you can do is if your piece, you're not terribly satisfied with it, the first thing to do is convert it to black and white. That's going to help you see your tonal values and compare it to your reference photograph. Also convert your reference photograph to black and white. And there you can compare the two and very easily pick out where you need to darken or lighten or bring in some more mid-tones. Like I said, I find it's that middle ground of the mid-tones that sometimes can let my painting down. Also, if your shapes are wonky, then turn the painting upside down. And your eye is going to be able to see, oh, that's a little bit too big there. Oh, I need to correct it there. So those are two things I do all the time, plus stepping back from my work, I should say. So I step back from my work every 10 to 20 minutes at least while I'm pasteling. Because stepping back from the work, not always, but it can help you as you're painting along in the process, correcting mistakes or doing things that need to be done. Sometimes even, you need more than just stepping back. Sometimes if something's really not working, then I go to my default, which is converting to black and white and turning the painting upside down. Like I mentioned earlier, those are things I use literally all the time, probably in every single piece. The turning upside down, it's more if my shapes are looking out of sorts, then I will do that. But if I'm looking around and I'm thinking, no, it's not the shapes, there's something else, it's my color, it's my tonal value, definitely black and white photograph is how I correct that. Sometimes also stepping back and having a cup of tea and coming back to it later, that can also help. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, you can check it out in real time over on my Patreon. I'll leave a link in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I shall see you in the next one. Bye for now.